The fog rolled across RAF Waddington like a living thing, thick and cold, swallowing the tail fins of the bombers lined up on the hardstand. It was October 1944, and the war had teeth, sharp, grinding teeth that had already chewed through too many crews, too many young men who'd kissed girlfriends goodbye and never came back to collect on promises made under the stars. Flight Lieutenant James Hartley stood beneath the nose of Lancaster ED-910, Queen of Hearts, painted in faded white letters just below the cockpit. His flying jacket smelled of petrol and sweat, his leather gloves creased and stained. He was 24 years old. He looked 40. They all did. Behind him, the rest of the crew emerged from the briefing hut in silence. No jokes tonight. No ribbing about the navigator's terrible singing or the wireless operator's obsession with American jazz. Tonight, Group Captain Morrison had spoken in a tone that made the room feel smaller, colder. He'd used words like absolute secrecy, need-to-know basis, and under no circumstances. He'd locked eyes with each of them, one by one, and said, "If you come back, you do not speak of what you see. Not to your mates. Not to your families. Not in your sleep. Are we clear?" They were clear. Sergeant Tommy Caldwell, the rear gunner, spat into the grass and muttered, "What the hell are we doing tonight, Skip?" Hartley didn't answer. He couldn't. The briefing had been vague, deliberately vague. A drop zone over occupied France, coordinates that meant nothing to him, a payload that wasn't bombs. 4 cylindrical canisters, painted black, locked in the bomb bay with chains and padlocks. No mockings. No explanation. Just a route in, a drop, and a route out. And then Morrison's final words, delivered like a blade to the ribs, "This mission does not exist." The ground crew was finishing the pre-flight checks. Oil drums were being rolled away. The Merlin engines of the Lancaster sat silent, waiting, their propellers still. Hartley could see his reflection in the curved perspex of the nose cone, a ghost already, standing in a world of shadows. "Right," he said, his voice flat. "Let's get her up." They climbed aboard through the small door near the tail, one by one, squeezing through the narrow fuselage. Pilot, flight engineer, navigator, bomb aimer, wireless operator, mid-upper gunner, rear gunner. 7 men packed into a metal tube built to carry death and somehow bring them home. The interior smelled like hydraulic fluid and fear. The instrument panel glowed faintly in the cockpit, orange and green lights flickering like distant fireflies. Hartley settled into his seat, buckled in, and placed his hands on the control column. His flight engineer, Sergeant Bill Hughes, ran through the checklist with methodical precision. Outside, the ground crew gave the thumbs up. One by one, the 4 Merlin engines coughed, sputtered, and roared to life. The entire aircraft vibrated, a deep thrumming that you felt in your bones, in your teeth, in your chest. The fog parted as they taxied toward the runway. Other Lancasters were taking off ahead of them, black silhouettes lifting into the black sky, their exhaust flames glowing like orange eyes. No lights. No radio chatter. Just the thunder of engines and the prayer that you wouldn't collide with another bomber in the dark. Hartley pushed the throttles forward. The Lancaster surged, heavy with fuel and mystery. The tail lifted. The wheels left the ground. And RAF Waddington fell away beneath them, swallowed by the fog and the night. They climbed to 12,000 feet, then leveled off. The North Sea stretched below them, invisible in the darkness, just a void between England and hell. Navigator Pilot Officer David Shaw called out headings from his curtain station, his pencil scratching against the chart. Wireless operator Flight Sergeant Peter Lawson sat hunched over his radio set, headphones clamped tight, listening for coded messages from group. No one spoke except when necessary. The mission weighed on them like stone. Hartley stared out at the blackness ahead, his hands steady on the controls, his mind racing. What are we carrying? Who are we dropping it to? And why the hell does it feel like we're already dead? The war was supposed to be winding down. Everyone said so. The Allies were pushing through France. The Soviets were crushing the Eastern Front. Germany was bleeding out. But this mission, this silent, faceless mission, felt wrong. It felt like the beginning of something darker. And then, ahead in the distance, the first flak bursts lit up the sky. The coast of France appeared as a thin line of shadow against shadow, a darker smudge where land met sea. Hartley felt his gut tighten. Every crossing was a gamble, but tonight it felt worse. The usual bomber stream wasn't there, no comforting presence of 200 other Lancasters hammering toward the same target, no safety in numbers. Tonight, it was just them. One aircraft. One crew. One mission that didn't exist. "Flak at 10 o'clock, Bill Hughes said, his voice tight. Hartley saw it, orange blossoms of fire erupting in the sky ahead, deadly flowers blooming in silence before the sound reached them. The Germans were awake. Searchlights swept the darkness like fingers, probing, searching, hungry for a kill. Hartley eased the stick forward, dropping altitude, trying to slip beneath the searchlight arc. The Lancaster shuddered as they crossed the coastline. Below them, the occupied towns were blacked out, but Hartley knew they were there. Cherbourg, Cannes, places that had been free once, that would be free again soon, if the men who flew these missions didn't fail. "Course 135, skip," Shaw called from the NAV station. 20 minutes to drop zone. 20 minutes. It felt like an eternity and no time at all. The mid-upper gunner, Sergeant Harry Thompson, rotated his turret slowly, scanning the sky. "Nothing yet," he muttered. "But they're out there." Rear gunner Tommy Caldwell's voice crackled over the intercom from his lonely perch in the tail. "I've got a bad feeling about this one, Skip. Real bad." "Keep your eyes open," Hartley said. "All of you." The countryside below was a patchwork of fields and forests, invisible in the blackness but mapped in Hartley's mind from 100 missions before this. They were deep into France now, far beyond the coastal defenses, heading toward a drop zone that wasn't marked on any map he'd ever seen. The coordinates Shaw had been given were precise to the meter, but there was no town nearby, no landmark, nothing to explain why they were risking 7 lives and a Lancaster to drop 4 mysterious canisters into the middle of nowhere. The bomb aimer, Flight Sergeant Colin Reed, crawled into the nose and lay flat on the perspex, peering down into the darkness. "I'll need a flare when we get close," he said. "No flares," Hartley replied sharply. Orders were clear. No illumination. Visual drop only. Reed's silence spoke volumes. Dropping blind in enemy territory was suicide. You had one chance to get it right, and if you missed the zone, the canisters, and whatever secrets they contained, would be lost forever. 5 minutes, Shaw announced. Hartley throttled back slightly, reducing speed, preparing for the drop. His hands were slick inside his gloves. The Lancaster groaned, metal flexing under stress, wings cutting through the freezing air at 8,000 feet. Too high for small arms fire. Too low for comfort. And then, without warning, the night exploded. A German night fighter, a Messerschmitt Bf-110, roared out of the darkness, cannon fire ripping through the air. Tracer rounds streaked past the cockpit, bright and deadly, so close Hartley felt the heat through the glass. The Lancaster bucked as rounds punched through the fuselage, tearing metal, shattering instruments. "Contact! Contact! Fighter on our tail!" Caldwell screamed from the rear turret, his guns already hammering, spitting fire into the black. Hartley threw the Lancaster into a diving turn, port wing down, engines screaming. The fighter overshot, flashing past them, a black shape with glowing exhaust pipes. Thompson in the mid-upper turret swung around, firing, his .303 Brownings chattering. "He's coming around again," Caldwell yelled. The second pass was worse. Cannon shells tore through the port wing, punching holes the size of dinner plates. The Lancaster shuddered, oil spraying from one of the engines, smoke billowing. Warning lights flashed red across the instrument panel. Port outers hit. Hughes shouted. Oil pressure dropping. Hartley fought the controls, muscles straining, trying to keep the bomber level. The Messerschmitt circled like a shark, lining up for the kill. Caldwell's guns were still firing, but the fighter was fast, diving, climbing, impossible to pin down. And then, silence. The fighter broke off. No explanation. No final pass. Just gone, swallowed by the night. Where'd he go? Thompson called, turret still scanning. I don't know, Caldwell replied, breathless. He just left. Hartley didn't question it. Shaw, how far to the drop zone? 2 minutes, skip. But we're off course. Get us back on. The Lancaster limped forward, trailing smoke, one engine coughing, the airframe screaming in protest. Below them, Hartley saw lights, tiny pinpricks in the darkness, arranged in a triangle. The reception committee. People on the ground, waiting for the drop. Target in sight, Reed called from the nose. 30 seconds. Hartley steadied the aircraft, fighting the drag from the damaged wing. His mind was screaming at him to abort, to turn back, to get his crew home. But the orders were clear. This mission does not exist. If they didn't drop, someone on the ground, someone important, would die. Bombs away, Reed said quietly. The Lancaster lurched upward as the 4 canisters fell away, tumbling through the night toward the waiting lights below. Hartley banked hard, turning for home, every second now a fight for survival. And as they climbed back toward the coast, something caught his eye. Far below, in a clearing near the drop zone, he saw movement. Vehicles. Dozens of them. German trucks, armored cars, troops spilling out like ants. And in the center, bathed in the light of portable searchlights, something massive. Something that didn't belong. A shape. Metallic. Alien. Hartley stared, unable to look away, until Hughes grabbed his arm. Skip, we need to go. Now. They went. But the image burned into Hartley's mind, seared there like a brand. What the hell did we just see? The journey back to England was a nightmare carved from ice and blood. The port outer engine was dead, propeller feathered, useless. The port wing had more holes than fabric, and every gust of wind made the Lancaster yaw dangerously to the left. Hartley's arms ached from holding the controls, from wrestling with a machine that wanted to die. They crossed the French coast at 4,000 feet. Too low, too exposed, but climbing was impossible. The remaining 3 engines howled, straining, burning fuel faster than they should. Hughes watched the gauges like a hawk, calling out numbers that got worse with every mile. Oil temperatures climbing on the port inner, he said. If it seizes, we're going in the channel. Hartley didn't respond. He was calculating in his head, distance, fuel, altitude, time. They had maybe 30 minutes before the numbers stopped adding up. Behind him, in the navigator station, Shaw was silent. He'd seen it too. They all had, in those final seconds over the drop zone, before Hartley banked away. The clearing. The German convoy. And that thing in the center, lit up like a stage, surrounded by soldiers and scientists in white coats. It wasn't a tank. It wasn't a truck. It was something else. Something sleek and rounded and wrong. Lawson, the wireless operator, broke the silence. Skip, I'm getting a coded transmission from Group. They want confirmation of the drop. Tell them payload delivered, Hartley said. Mission successful. They're asking for a status report. Damage. Casualties. Tell them we're coming home. They're asking. I said tell them we're coming home, Lawson. The intercom went silent. Only the roar of the engines and the wind screaming through the torn fuselage. They crossed the North Sea in the pre-dawn darkness, the sky beginning to gray in the east. Hartley could see the coastline of England ahead. Home, safety, a place where the ground didn't shoot at you. But his hands were shaking now, not from the cold or the adrenaline, but from something deeper. Something that felt like dread. "Waddington's calling us in," Lawson said. "They've cleared the runway. Ambulance and fire crew standing by." "Good," Hartley said. "Tell them we're on final approach." The Lancaster descended through the morning mist, nose heavy, tail light, the controls sluggish and unresponsive. Hartley could see the runway lights now, 2 parallel lines of white cutting through the fog. He dropped the landing gear, felt the heavy clunk as they locked into place, and prayed the hydraulics would hold. They came in fast, too fast, the damaged wing dipping, threatening to cartwheel them across the grass. Hartley pulled back on the stick, flared, and the wheels touched down hard. The Lancaster bounced once, then settled, brakes screaming, tail skid scraping the concrete. They rolled to a stop at the far end of the runway, engines coughing, smoke pouring from the port wing. Ground crew swarmed the aircraft immediately, but they weren't the usual faces. These were men Hartley didn't recognize, wearing different insignia, moving with military precision. They surrounded the Lancaster, weapons drawn, faces grim. Group Captain Morrison was waiting at the hardstand, flanked by 2 officers Hartley had never seen before. Both wore dark uniforms with no rank insignia. "Intelligence. Or worse." "Out," Morrison said. "All of you. Now." The crew climbed out, exhausted, filthy, and confused. Hartley stepped forward, but one of the dark-uniformed men held up a hand. "Flight Lieutenant Hartley, you and your crew are to report to Hut 7 immediately. No contact with other personnel. No debriefing with your squadron. You will speak to no one until you are cleared to do so. Is that understood?" Hartley's jaw tightened. "Sir, with respect." "Is that understood?" "Yes, sir." They were marched across the airfield like prisoners, surrounded by armed guards, toward a small building at the edge of the base that Hartley had never noticed before. Inside, the room was bare. Concrete floor, metal chairs, a single desk with a lamp. The 2 officers sat on one side. The crew was ordered to sit on the other. "You were over the drop zone for 90 seconds, the first officer said. His voice was cold, clinical. "During that time, what did you see?" Hartley glanced at his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for his lead. "We saw the reception committee," Hartley said carefully. "Lights in a triangle pattern. We dropped the payload as ordered." "And after the drop?" "We turned for home." "Did you see anything else?" Silence. The second officer leaned forward. "Let me be very clear, gentlemen. What you saw tonight, if you saw anything at all, is classified at the highest level. It does not exist. It was not real. You did not see it. Are we understood?" Caldwell, the rear gunner, couldn't hold it in any more. "What the hell was that thing? That machine? It wasn't one of ours. It wasn't German. What was?" "Sergeant Caldwell," the officer said, his voice like a blade. "You saw nothing. You flew a standard supply drop. You returned to base. That is the only truth that exists. If you speak of anything else, to anyone, ever, you will be charged with treason and shot. Not court-martialed. Not imprisoned. Shot. Do you understand?" Caldwell's face went white. "Yes, sir." The officer stood. "You are to return to your quarters. You are not to discuss this mission with anyone, including each other. You are not to write about it. You are not to think about it. This mission never happened." The Lancaster that returned this morning was on a training flight that experienced mechanical failure. That is the official record. You will sign statements to that effect before you leave this room. They signed. And when they left, walking across the airfield in the growing daylight, none of them spoke. Not because they were afraid, but because they didn't know what words could possibly hold the weight of what they'd seen. The war ended 8 months later. May 1945. James Hartley stood in Trafalgar Square with a pint in his hand, surrounded by strangers celebrating, and he felt nothing. Just the weight pressing down on his chest, heavier than any flak jacket. The crew of Queen of Hearts was scattered. Different squadrons, different lives, different silences. Hartley left the RAF in 1946 and became a civil engineer. He married Margaret, had 2 children, built a quiet life in the Cotswolds. But the mission followed him like a shadow. Every night, in the space between waking and sleep, he saw it, that metallic shape in the clearing, bathed in searchlights, surrounded by men in white coats. He never spoke of it. Not once. In 1967, an unmarked letter arrived. "You are still bound by the Official Secrets Act. Remember that." He burned it immediately. In 1982, a television documentary showed a grainy photograph, reconnaissance image from occupied France, 1944. The shape was blurred, but Hartley recognized it instantly. His hands shook so violently Margaret took the teacup from him. "James, what's wrong?" "Nothing," he lied. "Old memories." But they weren't memories. They were ghosts. In 1999, at a Bomber Command reunion, Hartley saw Tommy Caldwell across the room. They were old men now, bent and gray, but their eyes locked with the recognition of shared trauma. Caldwell walked over slowly, sat down without asking. "Do you ever think about it?" Caldwell's voice was barely a whisper. "Every day." "Me too, Skip. Every goddamn day." They sat in silence for an hour, drinking tea, not speaking. Because some truths are too dangerous for words. The mission didn't exist. The Lancaster had been on a training flight. They had seen nothing. But they both knew. When Hartley died in 2003, his children found a box in his attic. Inside were his medals, his logbook, and a sealed envelope marked not to be opened until 2044. The note inside read, October 17th, 1944. "We flew a mission that does not exist. We dropped something we couldn't question. We saw something we were ordered to forget. I've kept this silence for 60 years, but the truth is, we were not alone in the skies that night. What we saw over that clearing wasn't German. It wasn't ours. It was something else. They knew. They've always known. I'm taking this secret to my grave, but someone should know. We didn't imagine it. It was real." The note was seized by the Ministry of Defense in 2004 under the Official Secrets Act. Hartley's children were told their father had been confused in his final years. But in a vault beneath Whitehall, the note still exists. Filed alongside a mission report dated October 17, 1944, stamped with a single word in red ink. Redacted. And somewhere in France, in a clearing that no longer appears on any map, the ground still bears scorch marks that have never faded. Locals avoid the area. They say the trees won't grow there. They say compasses spin uselessly. They say that on certain October nights, when the fog rolls in thick and cold, you can still hear the distant rumble of Merlin engines overhead. But officially, nothing ever happened there. The Lancaster came back, and no one was allowed to talk.